my god, hold up. All my alerts are going off because I had to reset my computer. So if y'all are coming back from having our little week break because Jesus Christ, my computer decided it needed to have a mental breakdown, I guess, along with me. And all I had was the bleep bloop that goes off when like a USB disconnects, and I couldn't figure out what the fuck was going on. It wasn't picking up my cooling system anymore. And I'm like, oh, what is happening?
You look over, it's like, oh yes, a small fire.
A small fire. Yeah, I ended up having to call my brother. I'm like, you need to fucking figure this out. I'm like, remote in so we can figure this out. And I'm like, I was crying. I got so stressed I froed up. I'm like, I can't do
You're like,
this.
I need that for everything.
Everything I do is needed with this PC. Why is it doing this? Uh, but yeah, no, that was quite an adventure this last week. So sorry for no episode. I was kaput. I was done. I'm like, I need to just go in and sleep for a while and see if things get better when I wake up.
Hmm. It survived.
It survived. She's kicking again. She's doing good. Although she was lagging a little bit earlier this week. I'm like, what is happening? And I figured out, I'm like, oh, she's not in performance mode. She's just imbalanced. And it's like, I'm going to drop all of your frames in every single video game that you play. I'm like,
Mm. Computer.
computer. Anyway, Sarah, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. I just found out you could get the a copy of the Arkham trilogy for the Switch.
Ooh,
Yeah,
that
so I
sounds like
got that. It should
fun.
be here on Friday.
I'm a little jelly, I'm not gonna lie. I haven't played the
Oh,
Arkham
I'm so
trilogy in
excited.
so long.
I've never played it, so it's like I just like saw flipping through videos. And I was like, oh, this is a cool scene. And they're like, it's a cutscene from this. I was like, I will play that.
I will play that. Yeah,
That's
I
all
don't
it
have
took.
them, but my friend did. It was so much fun.
You can get the whole thing for the Switch and Red Dead. You can get the first Red Dead for the Switch,
Oh,
which is surprising to me. Yeah.
well, I mean, they just got done importing all of the Resident Evils, I want to say, including Resident Evil 4, the remake. I have the original on the Switch because the remake still be $40 and I've got it on my PC. So I'm like, I'm not worried about it.
You can't justify it.
I can't justify buying that. On the other side, I'm like, I'm also kind of like, do I still want my Switch or do I sell it and get a Steam Deck so I can play all my PC games on the go?
It's a tough decision.
It is a tough
Dun dun.
decision. It's tough being a gamer in 2024.
I know. Well, the Steam's great for like, not the Steam, the Switch. The Switch is great for when you have to travel
Yeah.
and you can take some cool stuff with you.
I mean, that's what the Steam Deck does too. It's basically a Switch,
Oh,
but it's just
yeah.
for Steam gaming, which allows you to access your whole library that you have on Steam as long as it's compatible with the
Oh,
Steam Deck.
I saw one of those. That was expensive. They're
They
expensive.
are very fucking expensive and they're always out of stock. I'm like, motherfucker.
Really?
Hmm.
Oh,
I think my uncle
struggles
has
for real.
one, to which I'm
That
like,
would be
leave
nice to
that for me
have.
in your will. I get that. That's mine.
30 years later.
30 years later when they're obsolete, and I'm just like, ah, well, damn.
I have a Steam Deck.
I have a Steam Deck. That's cool. What can you do with it? Absolutely fucking shit.
Nothing now.
Nothing now, but I have it finally. Well, in good fashion of keeping Sarah out of nature, we have a national parks case today.
Yay.
Yay! So, before we get started, while we understand that some individuals listen for the entertainment aspect of true crime, it's important to remember that these are real people with families and friends who may still be suffering from their loss. These stories are not meant to open old wounds or cause further emotional damage to those involved. We remind you, please be respectful and do not dox or contact those involved with cases. The case discussed in this podcast today may be disturbing to some listeners, and listener discretion is advised. Now, as far as trigger warnings go, I don't think there are any. And if there are, we'll touch base on those later. Or I'll like do the wee woo and come in and be like, by the way.
Excuse me, I'm butting
Excuse
in.
me. I have important news to say. Breaking news. I should get the SpongeBob like fish noise for that.
Yeah,
Breaking news.
you could. I think you can use it as an audio.
Oh yeah, I can go grab it off of a
Yeah,
blurb
yeah.
and I'll be good. Yeah. I can get a lot of stuff, a lot of weird noises.
That's a good idea.
That's a good
I mean, it would
idea.
be more work for you, but that's a funny idea.
It is a funny idea. I love it. So, before we get started, I do want to give a shout out to the book Sunk Without a Sound, The Tragic Colorado River Honeymoon of Glen and Bessie Hyde by Brad Dimmick. This man went out of his way to get the story from first and secondhand accounts of family, search and rescue personnel, and witnesses. I won't be reading the book verbatim, as I think it's very important that you go and check out his work and the work that he did. So definitely, if you feel more inclined to go search for more after this, please go buy that book. It was a great read. So, to begin this story, I think that it's important that we talk a little bit about the Hyde family first, because oh my god, did they go through it. Roland Charles Hyde, or R.C. Hyde as he refers to himself and will refer to him going forward, was married to Mary Roslow on November 7th of 1889. R.C. and his brothers at the time were engaged in very ambitious real estate projects. Eugene Hyde, R.C.'s brother, was actually building the three-story Hyde building in 1889, which it was swept away in the Great Fire of Seattle in August 4th of that year. Undaunted, they erected the building in 1890 and founded the Citizens Bank. They then built the Fernwell building. R.C. traveled back and forth between Davenport, Washington, where he worked on a federal claim called timber culture, and he received the title for that claim in 1892. However, the Hyde's family's riches and fortunes were ever changing. And with that, R.C. and Mary's first son, Fernwell Aben Hyde, died at just 12 weeks old. Then chaos hit Wall Street in spring of 1893. R.C. and Mary, who were well on their way to becoming millionaires at the time, fell flat broke. R.C. took a position as a janitor at the Fernwell building, the one that he had previously helped build and owned alongside of his brothers. And within a month, the Citizens Bank fell as well, which further caused him to lose the Hyde building. In 1896, R.C. and Mary's second son, Lynn, passed away at 19 months old. And while his brother, Sam Hyde, was running for re-election in Congress in the state, he was tossed out along with almost every other Republican from office. So it's just one thing after another. By this point, Mary's health had taken a poor turn, and she was ill very often and regularly had to have her tonsils lanced, which is basically the draining of excess fluid or possible pus from the tonsils. However, their luck did take a turn in 1896 with the birth of their first daughter, Edna May Hyde, in October. R.C. continued to work at the Fernwell building and was able to actually afford a home on Pacific Avenue. The two were then blessed again with their second son, Glen Roland Hyde, who was born on December 9th of 1898 in Spokane, Washington. Then, 2 years after that, they had their last child, another daughter named Jean Ethel Hyde. At the turn of the century, the family moved to Davenport to pursue R.C.'s patent on the timber culture federal claim, which saw them moving to a small farm-like stead of land in the area. The family would also regularly visit California, specifically Glendale and San Francisco. During that time at the Davenport farmstead, Mary's health improved. However, when they returned to Spokane, Washington, it once again declined and ultimately led to her death on December 20th of 1911 from Bright's disease, or kidney failure. This left R.C. with 3 children, all in their teenage years, and he was devastated. He moved the family to Prince Rupert, British Columbia, and was still adamant about the children receiving a good education regardless of location or financial status at the time. Edna was sent to actually like Auburn, Massachusetts to attend Lazelle Cemetery School for a year. Glen was attending a local school in Prince Rupert, and from what I could understand, he excelled in his studies as well as athletics. And Jeanne also appeared to have attended locally as well. All the children were strongly encouraged to learn Spanish as well during their time because it's basically the second language in the United States. Like, it's Spanish and English. The family spent a good amount of time outdoors, picnicking, hiking, and camping. And they spent time traveling between areas of New Mexico, California, and Alaska, where they camped, fished, hunted, explored caves, glaciers, deserts, mountains, and this one was actually really interesting, abandoned locations. So they were urban exploring
Ooh,
before it was big.
that's pretty cool. I'm a little bit
Right.
jealous.
I'm a little bit jealous of that one too. I'm like, God damn, that is so fucking cool. By adolescence, Glenn's outdoor skills were honed to a T, and it's said that by the time he was in high school, he began building his own boats in his free time. Then, in the height of all of this, the First World War starts in Europe. In order to keep Glenn from being drafted into the Canadian Army, RC moves the family back down to the lower 48 states, as the United States had yet to enter the war. And by 1915, RC moved them to southern Idaho with two children. He ended up leaving Jeanne with her aunt and uncle in Spokane, Washington to finish her own schooling. And from what I could discern from literature, it sounds like it was more of like a private school and a upper class school. So he was like, yeah, stay there. Now, over the years, Glenn worked with his father on a place that they would come to call the home place in a small farming community just east of Twin Falls, Idaho. And I believe this is Kimberly, Idaho, that this location is at. So I just forgot to write that down. Glenn did attend college, pursuing a degree originally in science of education at the University of Oregon. However, in the middle of the fall semester, Glenn moved to the University of Idaho in Moscow. However, he did note that, like, he was wanting adventure early in life. So mainly studies are there and they're great and all, but it's not what he's looking for. Glenn met a man while he was at school, one Harry Gulick, who had told him of his many trips down the Salmon River in a sweep scow. Now, just to let you know what kind of like boat a sweep scow is, it's like a squarish boat and it's described almost as like an elongated box with one sweep oar at its front and one at its back. These oars can weigh up to 150 pounds each, and if inexperienced with the mechanics of a sweep scow, it can be very difficult to handle. Glenn was enthralled with this story, and he planned his own trip down the Salmon River, starting from Salmon City, Idaho, to the Snake River, down the Snake River, and then into the Columbian River and onto the Pacific Ocean. At the age of 25 years old, Glenn withdrew from college for the last time, and he turned his focus onto farming. Glenn moved back to Kimberly, Idaho, and worked on a farm with his father pretty regularly, like doing crops and such. However, in the winter, they did raise lambs, and then come spring, summer, they would groom them. And there's this one part where it's like people remember him stomping down on the barrels of wool to make room for more wool to sell.
He's just jumping on top.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, oh, there's that boy bouncing on his wall barrels.
Bouncing on his wool barrels. Oh, bless his heart.
Bless his heart.
So, Glenn's first construction of a sweep scow was in the early 1900s with the help of Harry Gulick. And on August 30th of 1926, he and his sister Jeanne went on their voyage down the Salmon River on the trip that Glenn had planned while he was still in college. Now, apparently, this voyage was difficult, but also very fun and rewarding, and the two had an absolutely amazing time. Now, I'm going to pause here with Glenn's origin story, and we're going to switch over to Bessie Haley. Bessie Louise Haley was born in Tacoma Park, Maryland on December 29th of 1905, just 6 miles north of the United States Capitol building. Bessie was born to William Lindsay Haley and Charlotte Bernard. William was a wallpaper hanger and worked on and off as a painter. In 1910, Bessie's brother, William Austin Haley, or Bill, was born, and by 1912, the family had moved to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania during the First World War. Now, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania during World War I is a very industrialized community. They are known for their production of steel and things basically being pushed through day and night to aid in the war. There's a lot of comments on how a day in Pittsburgh would put anyone into an almost suicidal ideational state. And I'm like, yeah, I can imagine during this. And it's not helped by the fact of in 1981, the Spanish flu swept through, killing 1,500 of the city's younger men who had survived the war previously.
Wait, what year?
1918. Sorry, 1918. Did I say 1981?
You said 1981.
Yes!
I was like, that's a little after the war.
That's a little after the war.
3 of the wars I can think of that we've been in. I was like, wait a minute.
Wait a minute. It was 1918. My apologies. So, Bessie's family was lucky enough to survive these scary scenarios, and when the Roaring Twenties began, Bessie herself was posed and ready to ride this wave of change. While in high school, Bessie lived a 10-minute walk from school, and at 16 years old, she immersed herself in school activism, made friends, and by the way, jumped a whole semester to graduate early.
Nice.
Which is pretty unheard of for a girl in those day and ages. She was going to town. Bessie also starred as Juliet in the class play, was in debating club, and wrote for her school annual, The Quill. Additionally, she was an honors student in a college entrance curriculum, with her strongest passion being in art. Bessie met one Errol Helmick while in high school, and the two worked in a combined effort for The Quill. And the two graduated together in February of 1924, when Bessie was 18. The two seemed to quickly fall in love for each other, and by her sophomore year of college, her life took a turn on June 5th of 1926, when her and Errol got married in I'm pretty sure that's Catlettsburg. Come here, pronouncenames.com.
Catlettsburg. Catletta Bing Bang. I mean, what?
Catlettsburg. I was pretty sure that's what it was. Okay. The two of them seemed to quickly fall for each other, and by her sophomore year of college, her life took another turn on June 5th of 1926, where she and Errol married in Catlettsburg, Kentucky. Then, Bessie's life took an even stranger turn. After less than 2 months into the marriage to Errol, she moved to San Francisco alone, and in early August, she registered for school, immersing herself back in art and all types of creative atmospheres. Now, not much is known in regards to the short-lived marriage to Errol Helmick. However, there is attribution to an accidental pregnancy. And when Bessie's brother spoke to Errol, he stated Bessie was pregnant, and when she left the East, he'd send her money for an operation. Now, it's unclear if the pregnancy was terminated or Bessie simply moved away, gave birth to a baby, and gave it up for adoption, or if she was ever actually pregnant at all.
Dun dun.
There's also speculation as to the paternity of the baby if she was pregnant, and this may have been Errol's way of attempting to make her an honest woman, which, in whatever case may be, it seems as though this marriage is short-lived and rather loveless at this point. While living in San Francisco, Bessie switched to night classes come the January semester and took up work during the day at a local bookstore. Now, may I remind you, this is the 1920s, and if you know anything about film and like the growing population over in California, movies are starting to become a bigger thing. So many men and women are flocking to California to seek out fame. Many of Bessie's roommates at the time were among women who were seeking out said fame, and they had convinced Bessie to try as well. Additionally, one of the more glorious ways to travel between San Francisco and Los Angeles up to where like everybody's acting and doing things is to board a steamship where at times there would be partying and drinking, and it's said that you could leave one evening, dance and party all night, and then come back the next morning in time to go to work, exhausted, of course. As you can presume and imagine, this is probably the type of place that if you're looking to get spotted, this is where your talent agent is probably going to be. So, towards February, Bessie withdrew from school and booked passage on one of these ships to Los Angeles with no plans of returning when she met one handsome farm boy on the ship, Glen Hyde. So,
Cute.
Glen and Bessie had an immediate attraction, and quickly that blossomed into love. She accompanied Glen back to Idaho to meet his family and joined them on a camping trip up to Redfish Lake, which is tucked away in the Sawtooth Mountains just north of Twin Falls, Idaho. The Hyde family quickly also fell in love with the 21-year-old Bessie, but in turn, Bessie wants to introduce Glen to her family with the plans of marrying him. However, there's one problem. She's still married to Earl, and
Oh no.
he's refusing to grant Bessie a divorce. In fact, when she took Glen up there to meet her family, he showed up at the Haley's estate with plans to reclaim his wife.
Oh my god. I'm gonna get her back.
William, Bessie's father, stated that Glen and Earl got into an argument and both made fools of themselves. And Bessie's mother did not take warmly to Glen at all, further noting that she was more fond of Earl, as he was a very nice boy with a bad temper. To which I'm like, how are you nice and have a really bad temper? Also,
Mama's into something.
what extent of a bad temper are we meaning here? Is this why Bessie may have left in the first place?
Or why her child was illegitimate, or he claimed that that was the case.
Yeah, I'm like, there's a lot of things that like are left open in the spectrum, especially in the 1920s when it comes to having a bad
Oh
temper.
yeah.
So it's like,
Well,
oh, is she getting beaten? Is something else happening? Is he like screaming her down all the time? It's like, there's so much there. And it's not to say like Earl was a bad guy. I have no idea. I have no idea. And there's no evidence behind that other than just like a couple of things being like, oh, he's got a bad temperament, like blah, 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 blah. What extent does that mean?
sounds like a lot of gossip from
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people. And we can't really discern what is truth and what is not.
Oh, absolutely. So after this visit, Bessie relocated to Elko, Nevada in November of 1927 to file for divorce, as Nevada had one of the most lenient divorce laws at the time. To which Glenn also lives about a day's travel from here, so the two could possibly still be seeing each other fairly frequently. On February 21st of 1928, Bessie filed for divorce, and Errol failed to appear to the court proceedings, leaving to default, and the judge presiding over the case on February 29th granted the divorce.
Yay!
Now, Bessie left Elko, Nevada, traveling to Twin Falls, Idaho, with divorce decree in hand, allowing her to marry Glenn. And there's a lot of like different articles online that say like she left the day before she got married with this. So I'm not really sure what's all going on because everybody's got a different story, but the two did get married on April 12th of 1928 with Glenn's family in attendance at the Rector Ascension Episcopal Church, which at the time actually didn't allow divorcees to get married within its walls. So they simply spared the Reverend the details of Bessie's romantic past. Now, the two
Funny.
They're like, we just don't tell him.
Well, I just won't say anything.
We won't say anything. Have you ever been divorced? No, absolutely not.
Is
Wink.
this your first time getting married? Yes.
Yes, wink. Why are you winking at me?
Who's... Why are you winking at me?
Why are you winking at me? Now, the two had bigger plans for themselves aside from living and farming in Idaho for the rest of their days. And it's commented in other podcasts that Bessie was probably still looking for some form of fame at this time because it's a big thing. Now, during this time, adventurers and celebrities are one and the same. Expeditions like George Mallory going to Everest and Amelia Earhart crossing the Pacific Ocean by herself, as well as Clyde Eddy traveling down the Colorado River, are big, huge stories. Which, by the way, Clyde went down the Colorado River in perhaps the most bizarre way possible in 1927. He had like 5 ships, fully stacked with men, and he bought a bear cub from the local zoo. And it went down on the boat with
That's
him as well.
That sounds absolutely elite.
It was pretty
Bring me
elite.
a bear.
Bro, like 3 of these ships sank and they got all the way out. Multiple people died, but the bear fucking lived.
Good.
I'm like, oh my
He's like,
god.
not my buddy. It's like there are like a bunch of people drowning in the river and he saves the bear.
Exactly.
I got you.
I got you.
His name's Tobias. Tobias.
I need illustrations of Tobias.
Of Tobias, the bear cub.
The
that
bear
I just
cub.
named. Drowning in the river and he dives in after the bear cub.
Don't worry about me. Just save the bear.
Just save the bear.
So, as you can imagine, this big story ignited Glen's passion to go back down the rivers, and specifically this time, he wanted to run the Colorado River. And the two began planning their honeymoon trip to take a sweep scow down the Colorado River. So, throughout the summer of 1928, the Hydes looked to autumn for their rafting getaway. This would make Bessie the first woman to go down the Colorado River, and Glen planned to use the scow to set a speed record.
Nice.
The opportunities that this could bring were seeming limitless at this point, and they even had plans to write a book with both of their creative talents, which would undoubtedly at this time period be a bestseller. Initially, Glen had intended that it would be just him and Bessie going down the river. However, Glen's father, RC, hoped to join them just to add a little extra support and a little extra manpower on the ship, but he was quickly turned down by Glen as RC can't swim.
Yeah. That's kind of a big thing on a any kind of voyage that involves water.
Yeah, it's a really big thing, I would say,
If you-
especially whitewater
If you
rafting.
fall in and I have to choose between you or Tobias, I'm gonna save the bear.
I'm gonna save the bear. I'm sorry.
Oh.
So, Glen later asked Jeanne if she wanted to go with him, as she had on the Salmon River trip a few years prior. However, she declined as she didn't want to be the odd one out on a honeymoon trip. In the end, this left just Glen and Bessie to take the trip alone. With that, the pair traveled to Green River, Utah, where Glen built the Sweep Scow boat the two would be taking. One man, Harry T. Howland, who had experience with flat water between the Green River and Colorado River, noticed Glen's boat and made the mention that it looks like a floating coffin. Another man, Bill Reeder, an oil driller and individual who had gone down the Cataract Canyons in 1914, also approached Glen about his strange boat, and the two didn't hit it off, with him calling Glen surely conceited and stupid.
Conceited. No, not Glen.
According to this conversation that the two had, Glen believed that after running the Salmon River, he could run anything, that he didn't need life preservers or a water bag in case that they needed to walk out, or any more food or hunting equipment than was packed.
What? Okay, maybe just a little bit.
A little bit.
Just
I'm
a
like,
little
there's a little bit
conceited,
of
a
an
little
ego there,
stupid.
but I'm also like, honestly, if I had somebody like randomly walk up to me and just start like, hey, do you, and I don't know who you are, I'd be like, can you stop talking to me? I'm trying to do something.
Sir, I need you to leave. Oh, that reminds me of the time that one of my friends, we talked about hiking, like, to a pond, and he was like, yeah, we don't even have to bring any food, I'll bring my fishing pole. And I was like, wait,
This is how we
I am
starve in
going
the
to bring food.
wilderness.
Like, this is how we die. I'm not hiking 9 miles in with no food. Like, come on, dude.
Exactly. That's not a smart plan. Now, I did want to make mention that the reason behind why Glenn and Bessie didn't have life preservers was A, they are not what they are today. They're usually big, bulky containers filled with air. They're kind of awkward to wear. B, this is something that he probably also learned in Idaho, as not many people wore them there and they were not readily available until much later, and they were adopted into the boating culture in Idaho much later than everywhere else. And C, having big, bulky items on one's back doesn't really make for the best photo opportunities, which they're hoping to take some photos going down because they're hoping to write a book. So, Glenn finished the scow in 2 days at the cost of $50. And at around 4 o'clock on Saturday, October 20th of 1928, they were packed and ready to go. Glenn and Bessie pushed off from the embankment, with Glenn at the forward sweep and Bessie at the rear. So they took with them the necessary provisions and other supplies, along with a Kodak camera and a notebook or journal, as it's referenced to, that Bessie could record the daily events in. So the trip down the Green River to Lee's Ferry in Marble Canyon, Arizona was fairly uneventful, aside from Bessie falling out of the scow on October 27th after she sank her sweep into a current and found herself airborne into the water.
Oh
However,
my gosh.
Glenn did manage to catch her by the ankle and pull her back on board.
Pretty exciting.
Pretty exciting. I'd probably be
Well,
like, what
she
just
met she
happened?
how old's Bessie at this point? She's gotta be like 22, 23.
She is 21.
She's fine. Oh my gosh. I was like,
So
wow, that was spooky.
that was a little scary. She's probably like, let me just re-situate myself and we'll be fine. However,
Mm-hmm.
from there on, if the rapids were a little too rough, Glenn would manage both sweeps solely. They ran another 10 rapids and 3 riffles, which are simply just shallower, faster moving sections of water in a stream. So we're not talking whitewater or not a whole lot of whitewater. The scow did get stuck in an eddy at one point, which is a circular moving like current, which causes a small whirlpool to form at midday, and then Glenn pried it loose later. The next morning, which I presume is October 29th, they were in the heart of Cataract Canyon. Bessie reported a steep rapid, but ultimately there were no troubles. On October 30th, they ran the 20 rapids and among them some of the tougher drops in Cataract Canyon. However, reported once again no problems, and the following morning of October 31st, they spent the morning making any repairs to the boat. They had lunch, and after that, they launched into the river again in a steady rain, which unfortunately increased throughout the afternoon while running the remaining 8 rapids.
Oh yay.
So they'd made it through the deemed graveyard of Colorado unscathed, which is quite a feat considering the waterlogged scow had to weigh up to 2 tons at that point.
Whoa.
With Cataract Canyon out of the way, the remaining stretch of the Colorado seemed less intimidating, and the two pulled off and planned to camp for 2 days on the shoreline. Now, these plans were quickly turned over as the rain that had started the previous morning became one of the worst of its time, according to Moab's newspapers. The Hydes woke up at some point the following day, soaked as their tarp had leaked through, and the river had begun to rise. So they quickly launched on November 1st towards Narrow Canyon, where they left their inscriptions alongside others that had gone down before them, chiseling in the name Hyde 11-1-28 in stone. Now, over the next couple days, they make their way down the river past the Dirty Devil, which is basically an onslaught from another river into the Colorado that just barrels out like mud churned over river water. And then they made their way into the calm waters of Glen Canyon. On November 6th, this brought a challenge of headwinds, which a sweep scow or sweep boats in general are absolutely defenseless to, bringing their once steady trip to a slow crawl. So they sat out the storm and then continued down the next day, going down 14 riffles. On November 7th, they reached Lee's Ferry, and Glenn sent a telegram to his father on the 8th from where they were, detailing what had happened thus far and how the trip was going, ultimately telling him that they're having a good time. Additionally,
Telegram.
telegram. I am your
Telegram.
singing telegram. Additionally, he made note in this that since Bessie was feeling sick before she left, he informed his father that she was feeling better and was eating everything but the boat.
Good. Keep that boat away from Bessie.
Keep that boat away from Bessie. She's gonna eat it too. Now, while here, the inhabitants of the Lee Ferry area were very much aware of the dangers that the river posed and how it does get worse as you go down. One of the outpost's government agents working in the area, one Owen Clark, even attempted to convince Bessie and Glenn to disembark their river ride here as they were playing with death. They even told them of the recent drownings of 3 locals when they tried to recover the outpost's ferry boat after a summer flood that washed it away in June. Glenn seemed to take this advice handed to him with a grain of salt at this point, while Bessie, on the other hand, seems a little bit more concerned about what might be waiting for them ahead. The couple spent a day here from what I could distinguish, buying a few items from local Navajo shops before pushing back off, bound for Grand Canyon Village. To which, locals were imprinted with an image of Glenn nearly falling off the scow as they left. Yeah, that was my face too. I'm like, oh, they're so confident about going down, he falls off the scow in calm water. I'm like, oh no.
Oh, well, they're probably exhausted. Like,
Yeah,
oh
I
my god.
imagine they're exhausted. That's no easy feat. Now, they did have to stop due to some weather at the Navajo Bridge, which was currently under construction, where they bought some other items, a blanket, and some other provisions. Glenn also wrote another letter to his father during this time stating, I'd quit the river here, not of my own account though, but from what they tell us, we're over all the worst water. It's debated if it was Glenn, Bessie, maybe both, maybe neither. We're getting some type of cold feet at this point. The late afternoon of November 8th saw them on their 20th day of travel of the expedition when the Hydes reached Badger Creek Rapid. The Navajo Bridge was vanishing in the distance nearly an hour behind them. The two were now committed to running the Marble Canyon, a 6-mile introduction to the Grand Canyon. Badger Creek, being particularly rocky rapids, was greatly misjudged by Glenn as they took it on in dwindling light.
In dwindling light. He's like, we'll be fine.
We'll be fine. It's getting dark, and it's just like kabam into the rapids. I'm like, oh no 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 no.
Oh, Betsy, it's just a little bit of white water.
The next morning of November 9th, they ran Soap Creek, and that afternoon they plowed down the middle of North Canyon Rapid before camping and bailing water out of the scow. I presume on November 10th, the two took pictures at the 27-mile rapid before sailing on without incident. November 11th, the two drifted through Nankoweap Canyon and into the Grand Canyon. After running 13 rapids and 9 riffles, they camped at an area that locals referred to as Furnace Flats. During this time of going down the river, Bessie began a letter to Jeanne Hyde, telling her that it was windy and that they could be at the Grand Canyon Village soon, but she was unsure at the time. Glen chimed in on this letter, telling Jeanne about how the rapids were different from that at Salmon River. Instead of short, quick drops, they were longer and faster through the rapids here. Furthermore, Glenn stated how he was disappointed in this trip in comparison to what they had run and seen at the Salmon River. But he was still anxious to get started with the Grand Canyon portion of this trip. Now, the next couple days are a little rough to decipher what day they went down what rapid and at what point they made it here. So we're just going to kind of compile this up until when they get to the Grand Canyon Village. So at one point, while going down Shock Dogler Rapid, which is infamous for its blows and punches it delivers to boaters, Glenn writes on how his oar popped him under the chin and then got away.
Ooh.
Glenn managed to get a hold of the oar again, but as soon as he does, the next thing that he knows is that he is going into the water feet first.
Glenn, what are you doing?
And he's going under for some time before Bessie finally manages to get a rope to him and get him back on board. Bessie wrote in a letter how at this point she was ready to scale the canyon wall and just get the hell out of there. However, Glenn kind of laughs this off and laughs at her being like, "Oh, I'm done. I want to get out." He's like, "Nah, we're fine. It's fine. I'm fine." And they continue.
He only almost died. It's fine.
It's fine. I'm fine. I'm just a little waterlogged. I was dehydrated anyway.
A little waterlogged.
Upon arriving at the Grand Canyon Village on November 15th, after a week of hard travel through some really intimidating rapids, Bessie is beginning to gain notoriety for her being the first female to go down any of these rapids. Glenn, however, is trading stories with people at the village, and while he's kind of laughing things off and acting nonchalant about things and basically bumping elbows with people, being like, "Yeah, I did this," Bessie's starting to become more concerned and shaken, as well as quiet. She's not saying anything about this. She also writes about how she was scared to death when Glenn went overboard, and she doesn't even remember what exactly happened or how she managed to get a hold of the oars and get Glenn back on board. However,
Something else just possessed her body.
exactly. I mean, at that point, I think it kind of has
There's
to.
like an old fisherman that's like, "Joop." Yeah, oh yeah. The adrenaline kicks in.
The adrenaline kicks in because your loved one is in the water. You're kind of on this boat that's got to have somebody manning this, otherwise it just freaking goes crazy and you're like, "Oh, how do I do all this?" And it's just adrenaline, brain off, go. She does, however, further note in this letter that she's enjoying every minute of the adventure thus far. Now, given their quest to attain fame, the two sought out one Emery Kolb and his brother Ellsworth Kolb, who had ran the river to capture new photographs and films of the sites along the route. Additionally, from 1921 to 1923, the two worked as part of a government survey team of the Grand Canyon, and they also have a photograph shop in this area. On November 16th, Emery extended a warm welcome to the two, along with a signed copy of his brother's book, Through the Grand Canyon, from Wyoming to Mexico, which detailed the brothers' experiences down the river and how they managed to get down there basically safely. Emery also had a better camera than the Hydes, considering he had a photography studio. And he did a couple pictures
Ooh.
of them outside of his studio, along with them on the ship or around the ship as well. Now, Glen and Bessie's trip is about halfway over, and they're expecting to reach Needles, California in a little over 3 weeks. Glenn made mention that once again, the worst of the trip was over in a letter that he wrote to his father. However, before the Hydes left for their next camping spot at Hermon Rapids, they had a luncheon with Emery Kolb where he tried to persuade them to take life preservers with them, going as far as to try to persuade them to even just grab some inner tubes out of his shed. But all the couple did was look at each other, smile, and politely decline.
They're like, nah.
Which, popping in here, just a reminder, not best photo opportunities. They're not what they are today. They're basically anything that could hold air and you could put on your back is your life preserver. And in which case could also potentially hold your ass down.
It's just a drum.
Mm-hmm. In some cases,
I
yeah.
made this one out of concrete. There's still
Billy,
air in the
no!
middle, I promise. Why are you sinking? Glenn!
At this
There
point,
was air in the concrete.
there's air in the concrete.
Sorry.
This should be working. At this point, Emery mentions how he believes that Bessie is ready to quit, and how she recounts Glenn not only going into the water once, but twice. Additionally, he recalls her speaking to his daughter and wife before leaving, and she made the comment, "I wonder if I shall ever wear pretty shoes again."
Never.
I'm like, oh, that's so heartbreaking. At this point, too, Bessie has also given some of her clothing items to Emery's wife, believing that she's not going to make it out of the Grand Canyon, which is a chilling premonition. Now, the Hydes made their way down the river again, and on the afternoon of November 16th, they made their way to a small tourist facility that was still under construction about half a mile up the Bright Angel Creek, which this area would become known as Phantom Ranch later. The Hydes signed the guest book there with going downriver November 16th to the 28th in a flat bottom boat before heading back to the beach where they ran into someone who most people wouldn't fully expect to be there. Now, Phantom Ranch is known as a tourist facility for wealthy individuals to kind of flock to. However, this individual that the Hydes ran into wasn't just another standard wealthy tourist. This man is none other than Adolph Gilbert Sutro, who in 1910 went to work for the Wright brothers, where he learned to fly, before returning to California, where he studied engineering and began to design his own seaplanes as well as pontoon planes, the ones that land on water. I don't know what they're called, I'm sorry.
The pontoonies.
They're pontoon planes. This is just a short highlight, too, from some things that Adolf has accomplished in his lifetime. So he's not just some other wealthy tourist chilling at Phantom Ranch. He is an extremely wealthy tourist with an act for adventure. The Hydes invited Adolf to join them on the river down to Hermit Camp, and Adolf agrees, not knowing he's about to embark on the most horrifying 7-mile stretch he could have ever picked. The trio pushed off on November 17th. Photos were taken, and there was a stiff headwind, but in most parts, things seemed all right. Up until about a mile in, where they ran into trouble. That afternoon, they managed to get trapped in a nasty eddy for a while. Then they ran Horn Creek Rapid at its steep and violent nature, and worse, it was at a low water level at the time. By the time the group made camp on a small beach some miles down the river, the group was too exhausted to drag their sleeping wear onto the shore, and they just slept in the sand instead.
Perfect.
Which I'm like, I can imagine like crawling out of that boat and just being like, this works. Bam!
God, I felt that though.
I'm
You're
like,
like,
I've
I
been there
could
before.
probably sleep here.
I'm like, after finals week, absolutely no comparison to being out in nature, but I definitely walked into my apartment, locked the door, and just laid down on the floor because I had not slept in so long.
Oh God, what was it? I went up Quandary here in Colorado, which is one of the 14ers.
Oh, Jesus
And like,
Christ.
yeah, once we got back down, like the last 2 miles are a scramble, so it's just loose rock. And so once we got past that and back to the trees, I kind of just looked around and I was like, I could sleep here.
I could sleep here.
I'm on flat ground again. Time for a nap.
So the following morning brought the same as the previous day: a nasty headwind and an undoubtedly bumpy journey. When they pulled in at Hermit Creek to let Adolf off, Glen and Bessie still had another 10 drops and some of the biggest in the Grand Canyon ahead of them. At this point, the Hydes signed their names into another guest book, had lunch with Adolf, took pictures in which the smiling, happy couple that we see in the first photo has kind of vanished at this point. Glenn's got a grim determination on his face, and Bessie's just got this haunted, unsmiling stare.
He's traumatized.
She really is. Like, you could tell she's just
Oh
like, I am
God.
so fucking over this. But she won't do anything because she doesn't want to leave Glenn. So, Bessie's feet had turned cold at this point, and she'd written in letters about how she was reluctant to continue the voyage, yet pressed on to stay with Glenn. They returned to the scow, untied it, and cast off, leaving the small camp behind them and dropping into the unruly waves of Hermit Rapids, vanishing from sight. This was the last time they would ever be seen alive, and this is where we're going to end part 1.
No, the cliffhanger.
I'm sorry. The amount of
Oh,
notes that I've had to go through, I'm like, oh my God. And it's just
your
like,
brain's fried.
there's so, oh no, my brain is completely past fried, which, by the way, if you guys are listening, this is your 2-week announcement prior to anything going on. I will be taking the week of CrimeCon off. Please make sure that you check in on social media platforms for anything going on over there. We will be posting frequently, but I cannot manage to do another episode and all the research and then get ready for CrimeCon 2 and have all my questions for Paul Holes and anyone else that's going to be there because my God.
It'll be fun.
But yeah, no, it'll be a great time. But yeah, no, my brain is cooked because honest to God, I do have to hand it off to Brad Dimmock. He did the most when it came to this case. Like, there were people that have done research on this couple's disappearance, but it just does not captivate the whole story. Like, it feels like things are still constantly missing. Like, he went out of his way. But yeah. So, how are you feeling about your trip down the Colorado River, Sarah?
Well, I'm happy that I don't take river trips. Although the most I've ever done is like float on an inner tube. And like it has its moments floating on an inner tube, but I
Mm-hmm.
feel like the worst that could happen is like a crawfish bites your toe.
Or your butt.
Yeah, yeah, that too. Or you get up on to the shore and there's like a little critter at you and you're like,
uh,
excuse me, sir, I have to leave.
I have to
You like
leave.
just sink back into the river. You're like, no.
Yeah. I was talking to my mom. I'm like, I feel like my fucking Facebook feed is constantly like bodies of Everest. Don't go up on Everest. Don't do this. I'm like, don't go caving. I'm like, I would be the dumbass that would go down a river unprepared. I'm like, this is
Oh my
my
god.
my wake up call of not doing this because I've definitely had some thoughts in my mind of like, I want to go whitewater rafting. And my mom's like, you have motion sickness to like the 10th degree. What the fuck are you thinking?
You're just like on the side of the boat with your paddle and you just projectile vomit off the side.
Exactly.
They're like, group photo, and you're like, bleh.
Just mid projectile vomit, just like snaps the photo.
Ah. This reminds me a lot of was it my favorite documentary, which is it's called Paddle to Seattle. It is hilarious. It's just these two guys that they built their own kayaks,
Mm-hmm.
and I believe they started up in Alaska,
Okay.
and they paddle all the way down like past Canada to see or to yeah Seattle, Washington.
Oh my god.
Yeah, it takes them 3 months, and they film the whole time. It's pretty cool,
I mean, I
and
bet that would be
they're
a
just
lot of
goofballs
fun.
the whole time.
Like my
Yeah.
dad and I used to do kayaking whenever we went to Mexico, and I absolutely always had a blast with that. It was always so much fun to do. I love doing kayaking. Although my poor little arms is like 10-year-old me, like we get out there and we're like in the middle of the ocean. I'm like, I'm too tired to do this. And he's like, you gotta suck it up. You gotta do it. Because if you don't, you're
Mhm.
going out to sea. I'm like, and then I'm like, no, absolutely not. Best motivation ever. He's gonna leave me out here.
God, have you seen the video where they find the guy on the unicorn floating and he's like
Yes.
fishing?
Uh-huh.
I caught a shark. They're like, what?
What?
Pulled me out here. They're like, you want to come on? He's like, yeah.
Yeah.
And they reel in the shark.
Oh my like,
unicorn floaty.
that would be me. I would just be on the floaty at that point, being like, well, this is it. I had a good run.
God. Or was it? Was there an actual article or was it like an Onion article where it was like two men lost at sea say it was a great break from everything?
It might have been an Onion article, although that does sound pretty realistic
Oh
nowadays.
God. God, men were stranded. They only became fearful after they ran out of beer. Um,
That sounds more like Onion, but once again, it sounds pretty
yeah.
realistic too. It's sad when the Onion used to be like the comical writing, and now it just feels like, is this real or not?
Yeah. Oh yeah. It would be hard. It would definitely be hard. I get tired. I get like winded when I'm on my paddleboard just at
Hmm.
Horsetooth. I'm like, wow, this is a lot of work.
I want to do paddleboarding again. I would actually like to have a kayak and just go like peruse on the like lake or something, but
Oh yeah.
I'm also like, okay, Katie, be realistic. You're so fucking out of shape right now. You will go down like glub 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 glub.
Did I tell you, my mom, when she turned 50, she bought herself a jet ski?
She did. No,
Yeah.
you didn't tell me that.
And so what is it? They live across the street from Boyd. And so that's where we always go for
Mm-hmm.
it. And I've learned that you can jump it really high on just waves. If you like halfway through, you just kill the engine and like it just launches you out the
Oh
other
my
side because the propeller is what keeps you in the water.
god. Uh-huh. Oh my
Now
god.
only one of my friends will ride with me. Everyone else is terrified.
I I would ride with you once. You would do that. I'd fall off, and then I'd be like, okay, at least I know how to swim and like make my way back to shore. And then you'd be like, wasn't that fun? I'd be like, I don't know. I didn't get to experience it.
Mm-hmm. Oh my god. No, I'd make you drive. I'd be like, you're in charge of this. We're
You're in
going at
charge
your
of this.
speed.
We're going at your speed.
Because I do
Okay.
the fishtail where it's like you have to like lean into it and take the engine down, and then when you're halfway through the turn, you have to speed up, and you just
Mm-hmm.
keep doing
I mean, that sounds like a lot
that.
of fun. I would probably be able to do that if I was driving. However, I'm also like, there are some times I'm like, oh no, I can't drive this because I'm gonna get sick. Mom, I need you to switch with me so I can take a nap.
It's okay. I think the only thing people really seem to hate about it is the water getting splashed in your face constantly.
Yeah, yeah, I would kind of
Yeah,
feel
and
that
there's a
because
lot
Boyd
of
isn't
like,
exactly clean.
no, it is disgusting. Yeah. Oh yeah.
I'm like, I
Um,
remember Boyd Lake. I remember it a little
yeah.
too well.
Well, if you're like cold-blooded too, I think it sucks. I am
Hmm.
not. So I get hit with the water and I'm like, "Thank God." And
Thank
I keep
God,
going.
so refreshing.
So refreshing.
I mean, I
Jumps
used to
the jet.
live
Whee!
by Carter. I want to say, no, it might have been Boyd. It might have been Boyd. I don't remember. There was a lake over by us though that my dad and I used to walk down to. And he like told me about how a plane had crashed here back and blah 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 blah. And nobody knew where it was at until the bodies started floating up that summer. I was like, what?
Perfect.
Like,
We love a good bloater.
I think I was like 10 or 12 when he told me that. I'm like, okay, thanks, Dad.
Now you have a true crime podcast.
Now I have a true crime podcast. Now we know why Katie does true crime. Mom played Doom while
And
she was
bodies.
pregnant with me. And my dad's like, did you know that a plane crashed here and bodies floated to the surface? And I'm just like, eh.
Your parents came together and made you.
My parents came together really hard and made me.
Jesus. God damn it. God damn it. Phrasing.
Can't with you. Anyway. So, due to this case being older in nature, the case has obviously been closed for some time, considering we're coming up on its almost 100-year anniversary. This is 96 years old. So, this is definitely one of those cases that we probably won't ever have answers to, but if we do, it would probably be in the form of skeletal remains being found somewhere, which we're going to get into in part 2. But until then, we'll see you all next time. Thank you again for listening to Spattered. Please make sure to follow the show on Facebook and Instagram at Spattered Podcast and on X at Spattered Pod. If you're enjoying the show, make sure to follow and leave a 5-star rating on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, or wherever you get your podcasts from. If you're watching on YouTube, like this video, subscribe, and ring the notification bell to be notified when the show goes live or drops a video. As always, if you have a case request, any questions, or are interested in sponsoring the show, please email me at spatteredpodcast@gmail.com. Spattered is a true crime podcast hosted by Caitlin Gardner and Sarah Ray. The research and edits for this episode were done by Caitlin Gardner. All the music for the show was done by Lucio Cardenas. We'll see you next time. Stay safe out there. And remember, the truth is always in the blood.